Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. Today I'm going to show you how to make the Moda Love wall hanging. Now this is a free pattern. This is from Moda and you can get this on our website. It'll be that first link right below the video. Now the cool thing about this is that it makes different sizes, but the instructions are all the same. The size you make depends on the pre-cut you're using. So you can make a big quilt with a layer cake. You can make a very small 12-inch square with mini charms, those 2.5-inch squares. And we're going to make a wall hanging size 32 inches with 5-inch charm squares. I'm going to be using a set of 5-inch charms from Moda Fabrics called Shelbyville. And these are ones that my husband Matt cuts right here. And these are available on our website if you want to use the same ones. The only other thing we need is a background, and I'm going to use a nice light solid bone. Now I'm only going to need 30 squares, and charm packs come with 40 or 42, so I'm going to pick off the ones I like, and I'm going to see if any won't look well against the background. So I think all of these will look good, but these light ones don't have quite enough contrast, so we'll set those aside for another project. Now we're going to cut some background squares. We're going to need 18 5-inch squares. Next step is to draw a line on the back side of all of these squares. So I'm going from corner to corner, and I like to use a light pencil line. Now we're going to make some half square triangles. I've got my 18 backgrounds that are all drawn on and 18 of the charm squares. So we're simply going to take one square, put the background right on top and line everything up. Now we're going to stitch a 1/4 inch away from that line on both sides. So we're going to go down the first side and then just turn it around, go down the other side. Now we can cut all of these right along the drawn line. So I like to use my blade and ruler, slice it right along there. To iron these guys, I like to keep the lighter print on the bottom and then peel open the top. And what I'm trying to do is keep this seam straight. It's real easy to peel open and have that seam make kind of a bow, and you don't want to have that happen. So just keep it straight, open it up, press it a little with your hands, and then I use my iron dry, then give it steam. Now we want to trim off these dog ears. That's these little pieces that stick outside of the seams there. It neatens them up, and it really makes all the next steps go much faster, and the back of your quilt will be neater, and there'll be a lot less bulk in the corners. Now we need to cut our remaining charm squares down so they're the same size as our half square triangles. Now if you use an accurate 1/4 inch seam on these guys, they will come out 4 5/8 inches. Now the pattern recommends trimming them all down to 4 1/2, and you can do that if you feel like they aren't perfectly square. And then you're going to want to cut these to that same size. Mine are 4 5/8. I'm going to cut these to 4 5/8. The main thing here is to have them all the same size. Now we need 16 squares out of the background, cut the same size as these guys. I'm ready to lay out the whole wall hanging now, but something I like to do when I have a quilt that is the same in every corner is lay out just 1/4 at a time. So this part here, this is exactly the same turned for all 4 corners. So if I lay out 1/4 here, I can get my whole quilt to look nice and balanced. So you'll see that I don't have exactly the same fabrics in every corner, but I have the same value. And that way my colors will balance throughout the whole piece. So the first thing I'm going to do is put 4 of the same color or the same value in one stack. So I'm going to have to sort these out a little bit here. So I've got 4 in every stack here. Now I can start laying out 1/4 of the quilt. So we're going to get 3 of the backgrounds in the corner here. Then we're going to have 3 of these solid squares. And now I'm going to start putting the half square triangles. So there's the whole quarter laid out. So the rest of it is pretty simple. I'm just going to make the 4 rows and then sew the 4 rows together. I'm going to do that for each of the 4 layers that are sitting here. With all 4 quarters done, when we lay them out and spin them around, now we can really start to see the pattern. So I'm going to switch this up a little bit. Now you can see that bigger overall pattern and it's really starting to look good. So I'm going to get just these last 2 seams stitched up. I've got the top all done, and since I have my long arm all put back together and ready to go, I'm going to put this onto the machine. I know it's small enough where I could do it on my home machine. I could fit it all under there easily, but it's a lot more fun to put it on the long arm. So I'm going to show you the process. If you give one of your quilts to a long armer, how they get it on the machine, how they get it quilted. I've got my back here, and it's about 3 inches all the way around, bigger than my top. And I've marked the middle of it with a pin here. So we're going to pin the back onto these canvas leads. So we're going to put the middle of the back here with up against this mark that marks the middle of this canvas here. So we're going to line them up. And then I'm just going to pin all along the edge here. This is the selvage edge. And I'm going to use these big pins and take a big bite and put them about 3 or 4 inches apart and pin this all the way along. Now we're going to match the middle of the back here with the mark that's on the middle of this bottom canvas. And again, we're going to pin all along the selvage edge here. So just line everything up and put your pins in. Okay, it's all pinned on, but it's all loose. So we're going to take these big wheels and I'm going to reel it up here till I've got just a few inches left showing. And then I'm going to take this bottom one. This is pulling the bottom all tight. Now we've got a nice flat surface and we can flip these levers and it keeps those wheels from spinning anymore and makes it nice and flat. Now we can put the batting on. Now I float my batting, which means I'm just going to set it on here loose. I'm going to slide it down till it's about even with the top of the back there. And I'm just going to smooth it out and lay it on there very gently. I'm also going to add these side stabilizer clamps. So I'm going to clamp onto the back, and then this gets pulled all the way over here, and there's Velcro on it. So you can adjust to any width of quilt. And this will just hold it nice and stable. So what we need now is a nice straight line on here so that we can line our quilt up straight. We don't want to put the quilt on at an angle. We want to have it nice and straight. So the machine moves in all directions, but there's a setting you can click right here that makes it so it only moves sideways. So I'm going to put it onto a basting stitch and just start stitching, and this is going to make a nice straight line. It's kind of drawing it with thread. I'm going to line the top of the quilt with the line that we drew in thread, and I'm going to center it up. Here's the center of the wall hanging. There's that center line. So this is pretty easy to line up because it's so small, but on a bigger quilt, it takes a little more adjustment, but this one, very quick. Now I'm going to baste the quilt to the batting and the backing. So I'm just going very close to the edge, and this will be covered up with our binding. Now we need to pick out a thread color and then a quilting pattern. So here's some possibilities. And I always like to bring them over to the quilt and reel a little bit off and then decide, what do I want to show? Now we've got this nice bone background, so if we use a dark thread, the quilting will show quite a bit. And that's okay. I think that would look good on this quilt. This is a little bit more of a chestnut brown. That's nice also. I actually think that I will go with the gold. It's going to show up a little bit, and it'll show up a little bit on the dark fabrics. That should look really good. The next step is to pick a quilting pattern. And there's lots of different quilting patterns to choose from, but you want something that's compatible with the top. This is a good one. I have a lot of abstract ones that won't look good, so let me give you an example. This one is kind of funky looking, so I don't think that would work with this particular pattern, so I want something more traditional looking. That's why I think chestnut swirls will be good. That's this one here. After we've picked a pattern, now we need to figure out how to make that fit onto the quilt. So we need to measure the length of the quilt. So the quilt's about 32.5 inches, the amount of it that we want to quilt. So that's going to help us determine how many rows of this pattern we can use. So the pattern comes in about a 12-inch size. So let's see how many rows we should do. I think we actually will do 2 rows, and instead of having it 24 inches tall, we'll make it our 32.5. And that's going to make each row 16.25 inches tall. Now we need to figure out how many repeats we need in each row. So I'm going to unfreeze the aspect here, and I'm going to measure the quilt. So my computer will actually do this right here. So let's go over to the quilt and measure it. So I've got a little light beam on here, and so I can click at the beginning of the quilt, move it over here, click at the end, and it will tell me the quilt is exactly 32.5 inches, which makes sense. It is a square quilt. Now the computer will actually figure out how many repeats we can do. So we can just click some calculate here and it'll do it for us. So we're going to calculate the repeats. It fills up the whole quilt. Perfect. So we can cancel that. And now we're going to take it down so we're only going to quilt 1 row at a time. And that's what it's going to quilt. So now the machine will automatically go from the upper right corner to where it wants to start. And it's going to stop, take 1 stitch. Then I'm going to tell it to go, and it will quilt the whole first row. It's just coming to the end of the first row. So now we're going to move the machine, snip the threads. Now we have to move the quilt up so we can get to the next row. So I'm going to take off the clamps, and I'm going to go down to those wheels, and I'm going to move it up. So I'm going to loosen this guy and then just reel this up. Tighten it again, put the clamps back on, and get everything nice and flat. Now I'm going to baste the last of the quilt, start the second row, and then everything will be done. Now that the quilt is quilted, it's got the binding on, really turned out nice. Now you can see when I lay out 4 stacks, 4 in a stack, and make a quarter at a time, now you see how balanced it is. So we've got the gold spread out very nicely, we've got the rust very nicely spread out, and it just makes it feel very even and balanced. Of course, if you're using a lot of different colors, you may want a scrappier look and you can mix everything up a little bit more. This quilting pattern, the chestnut swirls, it's nice and even, it's very dense, which I like on a wall hanging. Can't really see the quilting on the back at all, but on a wall hanging, we're probably never going to see the backing. Now remember I told you you could make this with 3 different sizes of pre-cuts, charms, minis, or a layer cake. So I went ahead and made the top of this quilt here with the layer cake squares, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's nice and bright. And the squares being big, this would make a nice bed-size quilt. Put some borders on it if you like. So this one has a lot more colors in it. Really colorful, really bright, but still nice and balanced. So that's what you get with those layer cake squares. Thanks for watching our tutorial today on how to make the Moda Love quilt. Now, we've got another giveaway. We've got this really nice baby quilt. This is a pattern we call cutting corners. We did a tutorial on how to make this. It's a really fun pattern to make, but today you could win it. So go to the link below where it says giveaway and put in your email address and your name, and you might be the next lucky winner. Now, if you like our videos and you want to support us, the best thing you can do is subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would really help us out. Happy quilting!